Hello and welcome back to Astromantics, the show where I talk about things astrology. And today we're going to talk about relationships in astrology. It's one of my favorite topics to look at, to think about, to dig into. Um, why do I love to sleep with this person, but we can't seem to live together? Or I want to live with you, and also maybe the intimacy isn't super hot all the time, things that you can answer with astrology. And so I was going to show those of you out there sort of what you can look for when you're doing a synastry. That's a chart where you put two charts on top of each other so you can see how they interact with each other. I will give some personal examples of the charts and synastry and how that works. And I'm going to do my best to describe how astrology can describe how another person can make you feel, right? Like, oh my gosh, why am I so into them? It can just describe a lot of the feelings that you will have, a lot of feelings between you and another person. And you might be like, why? You want to know why? Why am I attracted to my husband? Why am I attracted to this person, right? Or a thing that you might really want to know is this something that may has longevity? Is this going to maybe be a long-term relationship, or is this somebody who's just going to light my fire for now, and then we're going to be like, okay, sweet, bye. So that's I'm going to talk about relationships today, and I'm going to share my screen because I have a little slide that I'll use sometimes to help our students, help describe to our students what I mean when I'm talking about relationship houses, when one person's sun falls into another person's house, right? What that might feel like. Yeah, so let's share the screen. Yeah, boop. All right. So this here, right? These are the houses here. It's a graphic that Mary made forever ago, and it has the classic, starts with Aries, right? And goes all the way to 12th house of Pisces, right? And so when you're looking at the houses, house one is self. Who am I? The mask that I put on, or it's the ego, right? The ego part of us. And then we've got the second house, and that is the resources. What do I have to make resources with money with, right? What are my ethics? Third house is siblings, communication, close neighborhood. Fourth house, right? It's growing up, right? Fourth house is home, roots, more than my nuclear family. Fifth house is creativity. It is the house of children, sex for fun, sex for pleasure. Sixth house is health, right? And day-to-day routines. Seventh house is relationships with others. The severity of it or not severity of it. Eighth house is transformative things, when you merge with somebody else and you're merging your finances and you're merging your life, right? You have to change tremendously when you are trying to cohabitate with a person. You can have planets up in this place to give you like why a person maybe prefers to be independent here, maybe why they don't prefer to get married or merge their assets with another. And then we have the ninth house, which is things that govern us, higher education. This is college, religion, philosophy, law, right? Church, things like that, mosques, all those things. 10th house is your career, your legacy, right? How people will think of you. They'll be like, what did she do? Oh, this is what she did. This was her career, right? 10th house describes that. 11th house is friendships, community, right? As I am putting my fifth house creative self out there, then it attracts 11th house people to me, friends. And then the 12th house is end of life. How have I been good to myself? Maybe not so good to myself. Public service, giving back. Where do we go after this? It has questions about that. So those are the rough houses. And so then when I switch to this next page here. If you are listening on the podcast and you can't see these, I will have this up on YouTube. So if you really want to reference what I'm referencing, basically this is the wheel again, but this one's blank. It's just a blank white page. Why? Because I just don't do aesthetics. I mean, I'm not as good at it. I'm like, oh, give me the coals, black and white, very Aquarius, the logic. And it's the same thing, right? We have Aries first, it's the wheel. Aries is ruled by Mars here, right? We can see a little Marsy there. Taurus is ruled by Venus, Mercury, Gemini, Moon, Cancer. And so you can see the planets that rule. Now, when we see a slice that has 2 planets here, the Mars, such as Mars ruling Scorpio and Pluto ruling Scorpio, this is before we knew Pluto was a thing, right? And now we know Pluto's a thing, and now we associate it with Scorpio. Jupiter for Sagittarius, Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. We have Saturn there, Saturn here. And then it has Mars for Aquarius. I don't know why this person put Mars, but Uranus is usually the one who rules, the co-ruler of Saturn. And again, we just didn't know Uranus was there until like the 70s, maybe earlier than that, probably a little earlier than that, but still, it's a non-visible planet, Uranus. And then we have Neptune, again, a non-visible planet with Jupiter for Pisces. So that describes sort of this outside of the wheel. Now you'll notice I have these little like stick figures in some of these slices. The slices I'm going to talk about are places where we tend to feel private. So you have to feel comfortable to share this slice of the pie with somebody. And then what makes for like, we'll just dig into it. So the first house is self, and I have one little stick figure in there. And this represents you alone, your ego, it's you, right? You're born, you only know you. The next house I have highlighted is the 4th house, and I have written here private for the 4th house, or really it's kind of wherever the IC is, but 4th house tends to be a private house. And so it's a place where we really feel, when you think about like introducing a potential spouse or somebody who you want to be with, right? When you are going to introduce them to your family, you know things are getting serious, right? And the 4th house is their home, where they come from, their roots, their family foundations. You go to like potlucks here, right? You go to family reunions here. So if a person's going with you, that means they feel pretty comfortable to show you their more private family bits. And then the 5th house is 2 individuals together. 2 individuals. So like it's you and another person, you're flirting. Hi, oh my God, you're so cute. Oh my God, you're so cute, right? It is more of the sex for fun, sex for pleasure house. If you choose to be with somebody in an intimate way, but you don't want to marry them, then your relationship falls into this house. Or this is one of them that might feel more comfortable for you to fall into. It is the house of children, though, too. So planets in here can indicate an ease with having children, or maybe you might have dis-ease with children, right? Sometimes if some people have a Saturn here or a Mars here, can be delayed in having children, and it can also be like a restriction from having children. I've seen it where sometimes people will have like miscarriages. They might just have a harder time conceiving than other people if you have malefics Saturn Mars in this place. Don't worry if you do. Other aspects, if we look at your chart, other aspects can help us to know more about that if we're looking at charts being individual. 6th house is routines. Okay, so the 7th house. 7th house represents how others see you, right? The first 7th house access, right? For example, my 7th house is Libra, so like beauty industry, you know. People tend to see me as a person who's looking for fairness, equity, right? Things like that. You'll notice that I have a stick figure here and a pen and paper here. That's what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to represent a contract, right? Between you and another person. So we're taking this 5th house flirty vibe and we're putting it into a 7th house, a little bit more of a commitment. Now we're going to at least start sharing our finances, perhaps, right? Or start talking about sharing our finances. When we're out in public, people see us together. They associate us as being together. That's why this is a seventh house. It is called the marriage house, right? Not that everyone has to get married, but you can be seen as, oh, hey, we're, pretty much together. We haven't maybe signed a contract, but maybe we have a verbal contract or an unwritten contract. Please get clear with your people about what you expect in this space. Or maybe you have Neptune here and you're like, I don't know what to expect. Planets, am I right? But this represents contracts between you and others. How are we going to partner together? How are we going to be seen together? Is it going to be with a contract, no contract, right? Marriage, or just common law? We're together all the time. And then the eighth house here, I have money, because now this is when you really merge your resources together. And I have a masculine and feminine sign here because this is kind of where those energies are going to meet up, right? You're bringing yourself and your partner's self, and when you're with them all the time, right? We've gone from a seventh house to an eighth. Things are merged together. Now I've got to change with my partner, right? Now we're going to grow together. We're going to learn things about ourselves. We're going to be sort of a mirror, and we're going to have to be really vulnerable with each other. So it is a, oh shit house, right? Where we're merging now together, and we're becoming more of like that one. When you think of oneness, planets in here can make it hard, or I don't want to be one with someone, and you can't fault someone for that. And then somebody else may have a, well, that's how I have sex, right? Is if I feel like I'm on one with this person. So other things like that. All right. And then I also have a heart here in the 10th house of career because it's opposite the fourth house. So this is the legacy. This is the, we are together all the time. We've met each other's families, and now we are associated with us together as a legacy, having children or, just working together, right? Because you end up working together when you're, partners. All right. So that explains, hopefully, the relationship houses. So there's the self, right? This is how we identify. This is private house. If somebody's son or whatever is up in here, it can make us feel uncomfortable, but also make that person feel familiar, right? Family. Yeah. Fifth house is, oh, this is just fun. We're flirting. Seventh house is, all right, what are we doing here? We're getting together here. Eighth house is, all right, we in it to win it. And then the 10th house is the result of all of that together. So now I'm going to go to my next slide. All right. So you'll notice I took off all of my little characters, and then we left a blank wheel here in the middle. And we're going to describe, some of how these things work. All right. Let's say that this is your wheel, and maybe we'll start with the sun. I'm going to take my sun here, right? If you have a sun in the first house, it is below your AC. Then you definitely have a very strong personality, or you maybe question less things about yourself than other people seem to, right? You might have a boost of confidence more than others have, or have an understanding of yourself and how you work possibly more than others. So when others are like confused about certain things, you might be more like, why are you confused about that? If, say, somebody else's sun, right? Let's say a person, let's imagine that this is a person in synastry, right? So now let's say your chart is interacting with another person's chart. And so let's say their sun falls into your first house. You might actually get along quite well because, it's two egos coming together, and the sign will depend upon how easily those two things go together. Like a fire with a fire sign, or air with air sign, earth with earth, right? Water with water. Those two might get along swimmingly rather well, right? When you have the same sort of element. if you have, let's say, anyway, so there's a pretty good chance that you will get along with this person. They will show you something about your ego and you might, enjoy being around them, right? Myself enjoys being around yourself, right? Shine on. If somebody else's sun falls into your second house, then they might shed light on your ethics, your values. They might also shed light on how you make money, right? Which is like super cool. So let's go now into the relationship houses. So let's say somebody's sun falls into your fifth house of sex for fun, sex for pleasure. You may find that you enjoy flirting with this person. So if you have a sun in Leo and the other person has a sun in Leo, then your suns shine on each other and you might want to perform for each other, or you might want to perform together on a stage, right? Leo being seen. Depends upon the other aspects in the chart, of course, but somebody else's sun shining into your fifth house looks like, ooh, I'm attracted to this person a little bit, and maybe I'm not sure why, but like when I'm around them, I definitely want to flirt with them, right? Maybe I want to do more with them. Somebody's sun falling into the fourth house, sorry, backwards now, but so someone's sun falling into someone else's fourth house. This is known to be sort of a private house, a vulnerable house, a karmic house, right? So when somebody else's sun, you can feel the fourth house person can feel strangely protective of the sun house person. They'll want to protect them, keep them safe. They'll also feel a sense of familiarity with the person, right? Like, I don't know why you feel familiar, but you do, and I kind of feel comfortable around you. However, the sun also falling into somebody else's fourth house, if you have that person on a pedestal, let's say, oh my God, you are a Cancer sun and you're falling into a Cancer's fourth house. I have a Cancer fourth house. I have noticed that if I put a person on a pedestal, or if I think of them as somebody who's an authority over me, then that sun can feel kind of uncomfortable. I feel like I judge myself more, or I'm not good enough to have that person in my home, right? I have definitely noticed that. Yes, they feel familiar. Yes, there's an innate quick getting along with them, but depending upon how I view them, I may not feel good enough for them, if you will. If we're just friends, or if you're my sibling, because I have a Cancer sun sister and a Cancer sun brother, oh my God, all day. Let's be together all day. Love you all day, right? I've noticed that. So there's a level of comfort, but also a level of discomfort if you have the person sort of placed above yourself in your mind, if you will. All right. Just had to go over that really quick. So now I'm going to go to somebody's sun falling into your seventh house. You definitely view that person as an ideal other. There's something about them that makes you want to partner with them. Maybe put a contract on it, maybe put a ring on it, right? Somebody else's sun there can also shed light on the things you like or don't like about being with a person, right? But this will tend to look like, and it could be like an ideal friendship. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, an ideal marriage partner. It's just someone who you feel there's a comfort or an ease about sharing with them, right? With, of course, you can take my car kind of a thing, right? Like, and again, the sign matters. If this is a Scorpio 7th, then you're also thinking about like the Scorpio 7th might want to control things more. So maybe know each other longer before you just let them borrow your car. But they also desire to merge. So they could also, anyway, again, sign comes into play here, right? All right, somebody's sun falling into your eighth house. This person's going to change you profoundly. You definitely are like, I want to merge with you. Not only do I want to have sex with you, right? Fifth house, but I also like want to be connected with you. I want to have say over you, and I want you to have say over me, right? So those are things that can happen when somebody's sun is falling into. Now, not that the sun has to exclusively fall into these houses. There's just a, oh, interesting tendency. I'm giving you sort of the easiest off the cuff, right? So I'm gonna put this back over here, but the sun represents vitality. So it makes you feel alive. So a person whose sun falls into those relationship houses can make you feel alive. All right. Communication, right? Wherever somebody's Mercury falls into somebody else's house, you may find that you will end up traveling. So let's say somebody else's Mercury, sorry, no, my gosh. It's all, oh, you want me to define this? No, I don't want you to define this. All right. So let's say somebody else's Mercury falls into your 7th house. It could mean that there's a long distance or you might have to travel, right? Mercury indicates travel, doing things online, right? Texting people, the relaying of messages. So anytime where you are having to travel or relay messages, if a person's Mercury falls into your 7th house, then you're thinking you might travel or communication. A lot of communication might be involved there. Again, even if somebody else's Mercury falls into your 8th house, again, you might have some distance to cover, or maybe talking about 8th house things. Darker subjects, taboo subjects might be easier to process and talk about with this person. All right. So that was something that I was just thinking of, right? Travel, communication. Communication is very important in relationships. Let's say you have opposing Mercuries. My husband and I have opposing Mercuries. That can mean that you process things in opposing ways. And so you might need to take into account, oh, I think of things differently, or I'm going to go about finding the information differently than, say, my person does, or another person does. Mercury square Mercury, that would be like if somebody's Mercury is in a square, so that would be 1, 2, 3 signs away. So Mercury square Mercury, right? Or in a square to Mercury would also be here, Mercury square Mercury. That can mean that there's, we just don't seem to understand each other. That can feel very frustrating, a Mercury, square Mercury. It can be challenging. So if you can and embrace the challenge of somebody thinking or communicating differently than you are, then, that could be okay. But Mercury square Mercury, if you ever have a person that you work with where you're like, oh my God, we just can never seem to see eye to eye on things, your Mercuries might be in a square or in an opposition. There might be some friction there. You're like, I don't understand you, right? So something like that. And those are nice things to know, because then you can be like, it kind of takes it away from making it personal and puts it into the category of, oh, we just have a square pop in, All right. So now I'm going to talk about the relationship planets here. Okay. So Venus, the goddess of pleasure, money, and love, right? So let's say somebody's Venus falls into another's 2nd house. Then the person will feel like, that Venus person will feel like they're going to bring me money. They're bringing me pleasure in a way that I value, because the 2nd house is ethics, values, resources. I find this person's way of loving and bringing me pleasure, right? I find this to be valuable. So the 2nd house person will find the Venus person valuable in some way, shape, or form. If a Venus falls into a person's 5th house, well, that she has dignity here, right? So she looks really attractive usually to the person who's in a 5th house, right? Because Venus is about attraction, especially feminine attraction, right? She's a very yin. She's not exactly a yin sign. She comes in yin, masculine and feminine, right? Libra's masculine, yin, Venus here. But she has dignity in the 5th house, so she has star, right? So the 5th house person will find the Venus person very attractive and desire to engage in pleasurous acts with them, to put it delicately. Venus can also be about friendship. Again, we have the sign that she's falling into and how strong she is, right? If a person's fifth house is Taurus, then a Venus Taurus will look mega attractive. If a fifth person's house is Pisces, Venus is exalted in Pisces. That fifth house person doesn't stand a chance. They definitely think that Venus person is hot, and like very desirable, right? So if Venus is in a sign, falls into a sign in the fifth person's house that it's Venus's native, she's a domicile there, Taurus, Libra, or where she's exalted Pisces, then the attraction is said to be stronger, right? Now, if she falls into a person's maybe not Scorpio. Scorpio is pretty taboo. A Venus Scorpio in somebody else's fifth house is definitely pretty sexy. But yeah, you will just view this person as attractive, right? There's some kind of allure. The strength of it depends upon the sign and, of course, how she's interacting with the other aspects. Venus in the seventh person's house. Ooh, this person looks good to marry up with. I want to put a ring on that finger, right? That's what you got going on when Venus comes into somebody else's seventh house. It is you are attractive. I would like to partner with you, right? I would like to work with you. I'd like to maybe contract with you. You bring me money, maybe. You bring me good feelings, pleasurable feelings. Can be something that person feels. If a person's Venus falls into a person's eighth house, hello, I would like to control your Venus, please. There becomes a little bit more of an obsession. So the eighth house person might feel a little bit obsessed with the Venus person. They might find themselves thinking about this Venus person a lot, right? I am so attracted to you, right? It can cause those feelings. And they also means that this person, the Venus person, because she also represents money and abundance, ways of making money, right? It can also mean that that person will help you make money in some way. For example, Mary, my business partner, has a Venus in Scorpio, and her Venus falls into my eighth house. And we work together, we do sign contracts, and she does make money with me, right? So we do actually have that kind of relationship. And even though we aren't sexual, right? Venus is still giving us money. She's still giving us her signifier here, right? Venus in the 10th house, right? Somebody else's Venus falls into somebody else's 10th house. You might see them as somebody who you like to work with, right? This one isn't exactly like sexy, right? This isn't, because it's a Saturn ruled kind of place. So it's more reserved, but it could get more of a glue. There could be like I have a desire to work with this person long-term, to be with this person long-term. Maybe we will be together some way, shape, or form in our career legacy kind of vibe. All right, so that's Venus. And now we're gonna do Mars. Mars. It's effing or fighting. Mars. Mars is a penetrative planet. I mean, it's got that little arrow there because it's penetrating, right? It is the god of war. It wants to win. That is Mars's objective. Now, the sign in which Mars is in and the house in which Mars is in will either make it super potent. If you've ever come across a person who's like kind of pushy, they may have a significant Mars placement. They might have Mars on the ascendant, Aries rising. Shut the fuck up. I'm not pushy. I'm totally pushy and I'm totally persistent. If I want to win, then I will keep going. It's not even just a want to win. It's like you know they want you to win. Anyway, Mars gives sexual attraction. Mars doesn't give options. Venus cares about harmony. How are we going to be after this? Mars does not care. Mars is like effing or fighting, right? There is a sense of aggression with this planet. There is a sense of I want, I desire, I go after, right? It's think of it as like a masculine planet, right? And again, we have all these energies inside of us, every single person has a Mars inside of them. And depending upon what sign and house it's in is how well that will be expressed. So let's go through Mars through the houses. If somebody else's Mars falls into another's first house, one, they might want to fight or roughhouse. They might want to give it to this first house person because the first house has to do with the ego, the body, kind of like what other people see, right? If you have a moon in the first house, right? When there's a Mars moon conjunction, right? Somebody else's Mars is touching somebody else's moon. I'm trying to get it all out of the way so that you, okay. If somebody else's Mars is conjunct in the same sign as somebody else's moon, this person definitely want to give it to that moon, especially if this person identifies as more of a masculine or is more the masculine person, and then this moon is more sort of the feminine yin receptive person in that sign, then that is like a, give it to me. Just saying. So if you're an Aries Mars, yeah. So we'll, talk about the moon here in a second. But anytime the Mars and moon have a conjunction, usually there is something sexy about it in some way. All right. Mars also can be the severer because it gives aggression wherever it is. So if somebody else's Mars falls into another's fourth house, right? Mars in somebody else's fourth. Actually, my husband's Mars falls into my fourth house. Is there sex at home? Yes, there is. Right. But Mars can also mean that your person may have to work out their aggression at home. So maybe they're moody at home. My husband has a Mars in Cancer. That is not a super punchy Mars. That is more of a moody Mars, right? Mars is in fall there. So his mood is on or off, right? It's going to fluctuate. We do fight at home, but we fight in the way of, we do like a lightsaber fighting, and we do like Boffer sword fighting, right? So we do like martial things. So not arguing fighting, but it is a like, oh, he'll be at home and he'll be moody. You know what I mean? Like he'll be all okay. So he brings that. He also brings severing to me and my Roots Family Home Foundation. So when I met my husband and we were really good friends, I come from my Roots family home. It was kind of problematic. I had a grandfather who was very problematic. And so my husband was like, you don't have to like suffer through that or take that or say yes to your family because they're putting pressure on you. So he caused me to sever relationships with toxic family traits, toxic family members. So Mars can be used in a beneficial way. But if you have a partner and, you are feeling severed or separated from and my husband is also going to move me far away from my family. So we're also going to have sort of some severed ties there, right? Because we move far away. So if your person's Mars falls into your fourth house, then they might help you to sever connections that don't serve you, don't work for you, right? Or they may not help you sever those. It might be more of a problematic. And if that's the case, talk to your astrologer or therapist. All right. Somebody else's Mars in the fifth here. That is a yes, we want to, usually. Somebody else's Mars in the fifth house is a yes, come do me, baby, It can also mean, though, too, like it can make for a hot connection, but perhaps not a lasting one, because again, Mars is going to sever after a while. It doesn't have to be. Again, aspects matter, but somebody else's Mars falling to somebody else's fifth house can be that's all that I want them to F me, if you will. There's other, semblances of that too, but we're talking about Mars here as in a sort of penetrative quality. Okay, somebody's Mars falling into somebody else's seventh house. This one feels less cool. Mars is a malefic. Mars is a going to want to sever. So this relationship, you might find it hot and heavy to begin with. But after a while, it's like, I don't want to deal with this person's aggro self. You know what I mean? It can kind of be similar to that fourth house, but they can look like somebody who is an ideal sexy partner, but it may not. Mars has to sever one way or the other. That energy will get used up one way or the other. So can you find ways to fight together, right? Can you spar? Can you join martial arts? Can you join a sport, right? If you have Mars here in the seventh and it's a sport, then you're using up that martial energy. But Mars likes to F and then leave, right? It's not a sticking around kind of energy. Mars in the eighth house. Mars is maybe a little bit more comfortable here because it's naturally like a Scorpio house. Mars in the eighth house could feel a little bit easier here. And this could be like they will change something about the way that you view sexy things, right? They might profoundly change how you think of your masculine bits, right? It can also mean that, again, severing could happen, right? This is why we can never fully merge, or it never feels fully comfortable to merge with this person. They can give that for sure. Again, if there's other planets in here, like Venus in here, then the Venus and Mars, right, can feel more comfortable together here, can help sort of mitigate that Marsy energy, right? So, but Mars is where we want to win, how we want to win, what we'll fight for, what we will F for. All right. So I'm going to put Mars back over here. Jupiter is the planet of children. If Jupiter falls into your fifth house, right, somebody else's Jupiter, then you might have children together, or they might bring children into your life, right? And they might bring wealth into your life. Same with Jupiter in the seventh house. When somebody else's Jupiter falls into your seventh house, it can mean that you might have children together. It also usually is a heavy indicator of marriage too, right? Somebody else's Jupiter falling into your seventh house, because that looks like marriage to you. That looks like husband to you, right? Like strong, long time, right? Jupiter in the eighth house, somebody else's Jupiter falls into your eighth house. Again, they will bring children. This could also be like by marriage. So when you marry this person and their Jupiter falls into your eighth house, that could mean that they will bring money and help take care of, merge with you in a way that requires them to take care of your wealth. This can kind of happen with the seventh and the eighth house. When Jupiter is here or here, you can marry someone who brings their children. You merge with someone who brings their children, right? And it can also be like wealth. They could bring you resources, even if it's not specifically money. It could be like, oh, they bring all their pots and pans, right? They share their wealth, their resources, what they have with you. All right, Saturn, really quick. So Saturn gives delays, maturity. It is the reaper. You reap what you sow. So Saturn gives a kind of glue, a kind of commitment. You're thinking long term. So when somebody's Saturn falls into somebody's first house or is conjunct their ascendant AC, this can give a kind of glue. Like, I don't know why I like being around you, but I do kind of like being around you, though I do feel reserved. For some reason, I'm not letting my freak flag fly with the Saturn person, right? But I like them, I want to be around them, but it can make the first house person feel maybe insecure, could be a word. It can make the first house person feel like more reserved, right? Or they'll think that you're reserved. And so letting that freak flag fly may not pop. Same thing if somebody's Saturn falls into your fifth house. This could give delays in children, right? Fifth house being children. It can give delays to having sex, right? For fun and pleasure. It might take you a while to really feel each other out and to have that pleasure. And it might make you feel reserved. It might take a while for you to get down, right? Because Saturn, but then when you do, there might be more of a heavier feeling of commitment, right? Because Saturn gives feelings of glue, commitment, longevity. Somebody else's Saturn falling into your 7th house, definitely an indicator of I feel a glue with this person, a glued partnership with this person, a glued contract. I want to contract with this person in some way. And again, we could start out slow, right? I don't know if I want to, right? Because Saturn gives reserves. You might think the Saturn person feels reserved, or you, right? So you might think they're reserved and they might feel reserved in partnering 7th housing with you. Might take a while, but it can make for kind of a beautiful glue though. Like let's flow with it. Somebody's Saturn falling into your 8th house. This is definitely indicator of glue. Same thing, right? You might have delays around it. You might have fears, right? So Saturn can give fears in the 8th house. I fear being committed to you. I don't know why. Maybe I can't put my finger on it. Maybe I can. And then if you can address those fears, it could also be like why can't I leave this person? Why can't I stop merging with this person? I want to be done merging with this person, but it makes it hard to not merge because Saturn wants to have longevity, gives a glue, and then that 8th house gives a holding on to, right? So it could be why do I keep coming back to this person, right? Why can't I separate myself from this Saturn person? Saturn doesn't necessarily give sexy vibes. In fact, it gives more like the reserved, again, like maturity vibes. Now let's put this Saturn in somebody else's house and who you might be attracted to. Saturn in the 8th house could be you're attracted to older people, mature people. Saturn in the 7th house, same deal. I'm attracted to older, mature. Depending upon the sign is how Saturn plays that out, but you might be attracted to older people. If Saturn is in the 5th house, then like definitely you're attracted to older people in some way, shape, or form, either mentally mature, emotionally mature, or physically mature, right? So if you're into like grannies, hey, do you have a Saturn in the 5th? My question. All right. If you have a Saturn in the 1st house, you might be like, come off as austere or reserved to other people automatically. All right. So those are the personal planets and the big houses. Really quick, the Uranus here. Uranus is where we want to be independent. So examples of somebody who may never settle down is somebody who has Uranus in the 8th house. This person may never want to be committed in the traditional sense because Uranus eats independence. I have Uranus in the 8th house. And while I've been married with my husband for 21 years, we have an unconventional. Uranus gives unconventional. We do have an unconventional marriage. I've talked about that. We, play with others. We play together, right? It's not exclusive sexually. And we both agree with that and feel that, right? I've got Uranus there. It requires me to have some kind of independence. You can't tell me what to do vibe is how it gives, right? So if you're trying to settle down with a person and they got a Uranus in that 8th house, maybe that's why they're having a hard time saying yes. Uranus in the 7th also gives independence. Yes, we can be together. I need some kind of separation, some kind of isolation, it's got to be unconventional in some way, non-traditional. Uranus in the 5th house, well, let's get freaky, baby. Eccentric, sexy, right? Let's try this, right? Innovative, right? I think of electrical too, right? Innovative, forward thinking, forward moving. They might have very progressive thoughts around sex for fun and sex for pleasure. Might give kink vibes. Neptune is where we sort of transcend and daydream. You might find yourself feeling drawn to a person who has Neptune. because it can be kind of glamorous. Pluto gives obsession. So if somebody else's Pluto, and it's generational, moves slow, will tend to have, long generations, but Pluto gives obsession. If somebody else's Pluto falls into your first house, you might find that you're obsessed with their body, right? Or they're obsessed with your body. They might change your ego in some profound way, right? You might be like, oh my God, I've always thought of myself as this kind of a person, but that you have changed me. Pluto in the fifth gives powerful, obsessive, sexual. So if somebody else's Pluto falls into your fifth house, you might find that you obsessively think about sex with them, right? Or you want to own them. Maybe you don't want them to have sex with other people, or they don't want you to have sex with other people. There gives kind of an ownership vibe sometimes with Pluto. But it's very powerful, and it desires to control. The dark side is controlling, obsessive, possessive. The light side is highly reflective. Oh my God, why do I feel like I want to control you? And then can you reflect that onto yourself? Can you be like, why do I want to control you? Right. And now if you can answer that, then you can bring that Pluto into the light, and you can say, wow, I need to work on my avoidant attachment. Right. Oh, I need to work on, how I attach, right, to people. You can use it to be a reflective tool. Pluto in the seventh house also can make one feel like I own you, you're mine. I have Pluto in the seventh house. I have definitely experienced people wanting to own me, right? If I'm with you, I don't want you to be with anybody else, right? That's not my husband. I definitely have, though, of the people in my life who have asked that of me, though. I want you and only you. And my answer to that is no. There's probably only one other person in the whole world, if they were to ask me, hey, can you be exclusive with me and your husband? Only one person that I could say yes to that to. But yeah, it also means that, so people want to control you, and you may want to control other people. That is something I definitely have to keep in check, controlling my husband. So I take that dark Pluto of, I want to possess you, you're mine, I can do things you can't, right? That's bullshit. So I then take that and reflect it, and I go, am I really worried he's going to leave? Right? No, I'm not. So if I'm not, then what's the danger? Right? And we have been non-monogamous for 13 years now. 13 years? Yeah. 13 years? Yeah, 13 years now. So we've gone over, I have really discovered a lot about myself in that time, about control. I've really learned a lot about my Pluto in the seventh house. It also means people want to have powerful sex with me. That is real. All right, moving on. Pluto in the eighth house gives, again, we have control. Pluto has a little bit of an easier time here, as it's one of the co-rulers of the eighth house. So people there's still those vibes of possession, obsession, and self-reflection going on here. But you may find that you want to be with this person and no one else, right? There might be more of a clamp down if that's popping for you. Yes. Okay. Now I know we talked briefly about the moon. The moon is the inner world, right? So this is about emotions and the body. If someone has a sun moon conjunction, no matter where the sun and moon are, right? Their moon, your sun, this usually makes for a fantastic friendship. It makes for you shed light on how I feel, right? Thank you. Oh my God, thank you for saying that, right? It can give friendship vibes. It can also give long-term partner vibes. If somebody else's moon falls into your fourth house, they will feel like home to you. There'll be a natural feeling of home because it's the moon's natural place where it wants to be. There will be a comfort here because the moon isn't as bright as the sun. When the sun comes in here blazing, it's like, oh, want to show everything. But a moon here, moon shines in at night and sheds light at night. So there's less of a, and more of a, it feels more comfortable for most people. Somebody's moon falling into your fifth house. I want to do things to their body, right? If somebody else's moon falls into your fifth house, the fifth house person wants to do things to the moon person's body. Share it with me, your feelings. How do you feel about that? Let's have fun with it. Somebody else's moon falling into your seventh house. Again, there's an at home with this other person. I feel somewhat at home in agreeing to, some form of contract. Somebody else's moon in somebody else's eighth house. There's usually, when they are sharing their feelings, it can feel like I can be vulnerable with the moon person. The eighth house person might feel very comfortable sharing their feelings with the moon person, and the moon person might also feel comfortable sharing their feelings more with the eighth house person because it's secretive and it's dark and the moon feels comfortable in the dark. Go figure. All right. Now I was hoping to move on to some example charts where we can see this in action. I have my husband's here. And then really quick, I have other ones too that I want to share, but I want to make sure that everything that I want you to see with these other two is something I want you to see. Okay. I'm going to come back and share my screen here. All right. So this is my husband's chart here. This is my chart here. Sun, moon. So we have a sun rising conjunction. My sun falls into his first house. It makes for a great understanding of minds, right? We both need seclusion. We both need distance, as Aquarius wants. So we have no problem being like, hey, I need to be alone. Hey, I need to be alone. One person isn't trying to be with the other person, and the other person is like trying to get away, right? And it's friendship. So we are really good friends. We started off as best friends, right? That's how we started off. And then it had to grow into something because with Aquarius, that's kind of how it rolls. My Venus falls into his second house of ethics and values. He finds me extremely valuable, which is like super great. Ooh, Venus South Node. Okay, that's like a bigger topic. I guess we don't have to go into everything today. My moon falls into his third house and my rising, we talk a lot. Now, this doesn't make for necessarily a sexual vibe, right? I mean, Mars is sexual, right? So there are some sexual thoughts, but there's definitely more of like a sibling friendship thing here, which is kind of interesting. It's not overtly sexual. And when my husband and I got together, we were not automatically sexually attracted to each other. We actually had to grow into it. But we knew that we got along super well, right? So we knew we could make it last forever, which is what we were into at the time, because that was the focus. I have Vesta, which is asteroid of devotion, in his fourth house, so devoted to his roots, family, home, and foundations. I would live with him and his family. His mother was my mentor for years. I do have a devotion here to his roots, family, and home. There is that there. And wounds, so I get triggered and got to deal with it. Fifth house. Okay, so now this is interesting. His fifth house of romance, sex with fun, sex with pleasure. We both have what is called our lot of fortune here. So this is wealth, right? And we do have children together. He will bring me children. I will bring him children, right? Also, the lot of fortune is the summation. It's a point, not a planet or a luminary. But it's a summation of your sun, moon, and rising, right? So his sun is here and his moon is here. And so then you take into that account, and then it comes up with a lot of fortune, right? So it's the summation of a sun, moon, rising, which is a person's big three, describes them bigly, if you will. So our lot of fortunes are together in the fifth house. So this does end up making, it's almost like a second ascendant. So it does make for curiosity around sexy things, around sex for fun, sex for pleasure, and around, texting and communicating, right? Mercurial vibes, writing about it. So we're both going to bring each other our whole selves, our bodies, and we're going to be curious about how to have fun, if you will. So his seventh house of Leo, I don't have any personal planets in here, right? My North Node falls into here, which is a karmic point, which when I said yes to marrying him, I was following my karma, my highest self, if you will. So it's a part of my karma to be with him, right? In some way. My Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn all fall into his eighth house. Normally, when two malefics fall into another person's eighth house, like that does not make for, it means that you might struggle with finances, which again is something that is true of us. It's always like, seems like it's never enough. So that is a thing, right? Jupiter is children and wealth. So, and he has a Venus here, right? So when we have both our benefics touching each other here, the Jupiter and the Venus, his Venus, my Jupiter, which helps to mitigate these otherwise problematic malefics here. Saturn, though, again, gives a glue, right? A glue for forever. Mars gives a severing or a can you pursue this Mars penetrative energy in various ways, right? So using this to maybe not be exactly monogamous, right? His Saturn's here too, right? It makes it for a very private person, but so I have a whole lot that falls into his eighth house. It also means that I'm going to profoundly change him with my beliefs, with how I pursue sexy things, and with my maturity, right? My Saturn. We can even switch these really quick. You can see mine. All right, my first house here, his Jupiter and Mercury fall into my fifth house of Leo. Again, we have a significator of wealth, children, having children together, which is true. His DC falls into my fifth. This means, so his angle here falls into my fifth house. This means that not only is he a ideal marriage partner, right? Somebody who I could see myself marrying, but somebody who I could see myself having children with. Somebody who I could see myself having fun with. Also, my fifth house of fun and pleasure likes to be on a stage. I feel very romantical when we're in public. And so his DC here, so him being with his other, me, makes for a little bit of exhibitionism, if you will. Yeah, so then again, we've got his eighth house falling into my sixth house of day to day, so vulnerable every day. Now you'll also notice my Mars, we have a Mars and Venus conjunction, right? Mars, Venus conjunction. Whenever you have that in a chart, it's considered a hard aspect, so not something that's easy to deal with. But when you want friction to have good intimacy, right? So when you have a Venus-Mars conjunction, it's kind of wonderful in a chart because then that means that it's a challenge, but that friction can be used for a challenge, right? Like, for example, my husband has an eighth house. So he desires to have control over who sees him, what he's attracted to, his money, and his maturity, right? His self. So like he wants to maintain control. And I love routine, right? And I want to control his finances, right? His eighth house stuff. So we have a Venus Mars that is a, love and, sex here, right? That is those two things. In a hard aspect, which is really good because that makes for good friction. They're both in the sign of Virgo though. So we both want to be of practical use to each other. Both of us kind of want to be a sub to each other, but you can't have two subs, but when you have two subs, it can make it less interesting sometimes, right? For a long term. So I, being the Mars person, sort of the more penetrative person, less soft person, need to find ways to pursue him, right? And Venus and Virgo likes routines. I like routines. I like regularity. I like it. I like to know they want to refine. So he would be like, I want to refine your pleasure, right? What do you need? And so he's very good at that. So we have refined our pleasure down to nitty gritty, right? I know exactly what I need to do to have my heights, climax, and he knows exactly what he needs to do. And we know how to communicate that because it's very verbal. Now, does it make for an intense, passionate love life forever? No, right? It creates a lot of familiarity, and it creates a lot of opportunity to refine. It creates a lot of opportunity to communicate, and it makes for a lot of routine. Now, routine can be a death sentence to certain signs. If you have a fire or an air sign, that can be like, right? If you have a fire or air Mars, I can be like, oh my God, routine, death to me. But you know, when you're two Virgos, you're like, oh, let's get this down to a science. Perfect. Perfect. Perfectionist, right? That's what they do. Let's get it perfect between us. We have Uranus and Uranus. So we have Uranus and Uranus together. That means we both need to be independent in some way in our merging together, right? So that's why unconventional. This is why I have unconventional relationships in this way, non-traditional marriage stuff, right? This is part of the reason why. His Mars is in a sextile to my Mars, right? That gives us kind of an ease between. So this is why we're not fighting all the time. The Venus conjunction gives friction. This gives more of an ease. So Mars trine. So when Mars is in the same sign, same Earth sign, right? That gives for an easy Mars. That means maybe you won't fight or argue so much, but your sex may be not super hot. There's an ease with it, right? Or it's hot at first, but you kind of maintain it after a long time. When you have a Mars square Mars, so Mars is 1, 2, 3 signs away, that can be for like, oh my gosh, I just want to tear off your clothes and I want to do things to you, right? Like it gives like aggression, right? But it also gives for fighting, more potential for fighting and arguing long term. Not in every case, just that's a tendency that I've seen. So Mars, opposite Mars, and a Mars in a square can give like good, hot, sexy, but not an ease in the long term, right? You may fight long term. And some charts maybe prefer that, but not me. We've got, so that's our chart, like really quick. And then I was going to show this chart. This was I have it labeled F buddy. So this is I'm on the outside here, and this person is on the inside here. And I'm going to show you some things. We have a Venus-Mars conjunction here, right? I'm the Venus. This person is the Mars, right? So we have a hard aspect here and an aspect that would still be nice like over time, right? This person I've known since like 2014, and it's been like on and off. We haven't done anything in like a very long time, but I would still consider this person like my friend. And this person hits me up, like will email me like every other year, it feels like, to be like, hey, how you feeling? You know, and this person's really fun. I like this person. So this makes for, yes, pretty good, right? It makes for musical, right? More watery vibes, more watery feels, right? More beliefs, right? And pleasure, right? But a Mars in Pisces usually doesn't do the pursuing, and a Venus in Pisces doesn't do the pursuing either. So that's why it like goes years in between, because neither one of us is pursuing usually. We do have a Mars opposite Mars. Look at that. His Mars 15 of Pisces, 7th house. My Mars 14, right? Falling into his first house. So we have a Mars first house. So that gives sexy. My Mars wants to be inside of you, if you will. Pluto's here in this person's first house as well, which means that it can be obsessive, right? We can't obsess over each other. When we first met, there was definitely like kind of a bit more of an obsession, but not so much. Mars opposite Mars, again, gives more friction here, right? Which is great for effing. And then the other thing that we have here that I wanted to point out is my Saturn 26 degrees is on his ascendant of 24 degrees, right, of Virgo. This means that we're committed to each other's bodies, if you will, right? When we are with each other, we're just with each other. We're not doing things with other people. It's kind of like a loyalty to just the two of us while we're out. And that goes both ways. So the other thing that we have is his Saturn is at 7 degrees and of Aries, and my rising AC is at 6 degrees of Aries. So again, I'm committed to you only when only when we're together, right? I remember mentioning this to him. We were walking one time, getting some food, and I said, yeah, we're kind of only like loyal to each other when we're in each other's presence. And he was like, isn't that kind of the best way? And I was like, that's totally the best way. Thank you very much. And then the other thing we have in common here is we've got a sun on sun, right? Mercury moon. The more I talk, the more he goes, oh my God, you're explaining my feelings. Aquarius on Aquarius, this makes for having an unconventional kind of friendship, which we do or did. I don't know. I haven't talked to that guy since 2021. He has a Venus in the 5th house already, which means that he is definitely into pleasures while engaging in intimacy and things like that. He's on the pleasure side. We've got a sextile here. Well, it takes it out, but there's a Venus sextile Venus here. So some good stuff in there. So we've got friction going. We've got another friction here going, right? And then we've got when I'm in your presence kind of going on here, right? But as far as like longevity, I mean, my 10th house of career. So he thinks my career is sexy, maybe, right? Or we have like on friendship vibes here every day, and it's in my 11th house, right? So yeah, just stuff that doesn't make for exactly commitment. Anyway, so that was like the thought there. Whereas my husband and I, my 8th house is his 8th house is every day with me. And look at all that. We have all this. We have a Jupiter Sun exact conjunction. That's a classic sort of husband and wife, or masculine, feminine person, right? That's kind of a classic one there. Yeah. So those are kind of the things that I wanted to put out there. All right. I've been talking for so long. Oh my God. You guys know everything now. Yeah, hit us up if you have any questions. Please join us for WTF is Astrology, and we'll go over the planets, and you can learn more about the planets and more about the signs and houses so that you can piece it all together yourself. Or if you're like, Lacey, I'd rather you just do it. Just tell me what I need to know. That's my favorite way. I prefer to just tell you what you need to know. Thanks for listening to me talk. We do also have what's called on our website a Moon Touch lecture, where I talk about how your partner might like to be touched if their moon is in, right, say Sagittarius, or my husband's moon in Capricorn, right? How might they want to engage with their bodies and how their bodies engage with you, right? Plus, it's kind of fun. Where do I touch my partner? How do I get this ball rolling? Anyway, yeah, I'm not Mars ruled at all. All right. Thank you for joining me. I will speak at you later. Bye-bye.